Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Today we are going to talk about the use and the abuse of the word philosophy and philosopher in South Africa. First of all, we have to acknowledge that Africa has played a major role when it comes to producing greatest philosopher in the past. Some of these sage or indigenous philosophers were communal people, ordinary people from the communities, mostly were elder people who possess great wisdom that they gathered within their communities. Through the wisdom, they were able to articulate some of the scientific knowledge and spiritual as well as various knowledge forms. But now in the contemporary African societies, especially let me focus on South Africa, there's been some abuse of the word philosophy, you know, by some academics. Some of these academics, they even call themselves philosophers. We all know that in South Africa, our university has not been able to produce the great philosophers. They only produce academics and teachers who actually repeat things that were already written by Greeks, ancient Africans. They've never come up with their own concept of what we mean by philosophy or develop a new branch of understanding philosophy which is relating to contemporary societies. Now, I was so surprised, when I was reading a paper recently, some universities were even bragging that, hey, our university produces philosophers. But when you listen to those people that they call philosophers, you read the article that are published, there's nothing philosophically. Let's try to be honest. In the country like South Africa, we only produce few philosophers. For example, if you look at the well-known philosophers, we've got Professor Ezekiel Mpatlele. So if you go and read the books written by Ezekiel Mpatlele, you can see that he was a philosopher, undisputable. And you listen to the videos online and you read the books, I Write What I Like by Steve Bantu Biko. You can see that Steve Bantu Biko was indeed a philosopher. And other people that I don't want to mention, those guys had a knowledge that you can see that it's associated with the philosophies. But now in South Africa, we've got academics who just publish books or an article. They're calling themselves philosophers. They can't even speak proper English or even articulate some of the philosophical thought on indigenous knowledge, on indigenous languages. Just imagine somebody struggling to articulate philosophical thought using his or her mother tongue or native languages. How can that person be able to do it in English? Let's try to be honest. For you to be able to excel in the field of philosophy, at least you need to possess certain knowledge and analytical skills from language. It doesn't matter whether it's English, it's the French, it's the Italians, or it's any South African language. But I'm actually quite disappointed by some of the academics in South Africa who call themselves philosophers. Now, the question that I beg to ask is that why are you calling yourself a philosopher? You publish a book which is just like a repetition. We already know that these books that you write or articles in, why can't you develop some new concept so that world will read about you? So what I'm trying to say here, I'm not trying to criticize our philosophers, the so-called philosophers. I'm trying to be honest and realistic. Because we cannot have a people who go outside and try to claim to be philosophers without even develop any philosophical thought. Let's try to formulate some ideas that can be able to inspire us or try to to inspire our societies. I'm so surprised by how the word philosophers has been used in South Africa. Everybody knows that there's abuse of the word philosophy and a philosophers, or somebody thinkers, it's derived from the Greek words. Philosophy is from the Greek words, which means love of wisdom. But here in South Africa, these things have been abused, and academics are calling themselves philosophers without even invented any ways or method of critical thinking or analysis. Let's try to be honest and again with the use of these words. Even our universities are also responsible of these hypocrisies of trying to be something we're not. We don't have philosophers in South Africa. The philosophers. We only have the so-called academics. Our people are struggling. If you are a philosopher, tell us what is it that you have developed that you can. But speaking from South African standpoint, we don't have philosophers in South Africa. So whoever claimed to be philosophers, that's surprising. What is it that he has done to prove that he's a philosopher? There's a difference between writing academic papers, and being a philosopher. Even in Greece, ancient Greece, the great Greek philosophers, some of them operating on the street. They walk on the street and try to give their lesson in Athens for ordinary people, But now we've got somebody who's writing an article which is edited by his friends and published by the journals attached to his universities or her universities. All of a sudden, he claimed to be philosophers. If somebody claims that he's a philosopher, you can come forward and say, I am a philosopher. And I can tell you that there is no any evidence that can prove that South Africa has active philosophers. We do have some, people who are very informed, political informed. I like even our president, some of them, they've got a philosophical thought. But in academic, they articulate some philosophical thought. But they've never claimed to be philosophers. That's what I like about African leaders. Some of them are very informed, very educated people, but they've never claimed to be philosophers. People who always claim to be philosophers are academics. These academics are not even, on top level. They're just ordinary academics. They claim to be philosophers. You ask their student, do you think Dr. XYZ is a? The student say, no, he's not. He can't think critically. If you think I'm lying, go and Google any person who's calling him or herself a philosopher in South Africa. Look at their video online and listen to their papers. I can tell you, you'll never cross with interesting piece of writing that can motivate you to go and read. You know what I mean? They can't even give a simple speech. Politicians are better. You see in South Africa is one of the most talented philosophers. One of the most talented, sorry to say philosophers, one of the talented politicians. They are very good in giving speech. We like that things. So they excel. But when it comes to academics who claim to be philosophers, no, we don't have philosophers. We simply don't have philosophers. Our university should not mislead people claiming that our people are philosophers. Last but not least, I want to say something which is very interesting. There is a problem in our African countries now. Archaeological site, monument, museum are going down, man. Even our libraries that possess, African books, Asian books, very valuable objects are being banned. That they just something we hear that the fire has broke out. We lost those things. No, these things don't just happen. We are going in the past. In the near future, we'll be traveling to study these things abroad. We're going to study African knowledge system abroad if you don't care. Now, if I had a power, I would have, tried all my best to preserve African knowledge system. But we don't have time for that. African don't have time for that. We are living in the place where you don't care about tomorrow. You only care about yourself. So, like I said, I can tell you that in future, many African scholars or intellectuals, they'll be traveling from Africa to abroad to study African knowledge system because we didn't preserve it. Okay, until we meet again with other exciting project. Thank you for listening to my talk. But like I said, there's no philosopher in South Africa. So we should not lie. We do have academics who articulate some philosophical thought, but they must not call themselves. For us to be able to produce a decent and reasonable, a critical philosopher, we need to have a foundation. So far, we don't have foundation for that. We've got people who quote others. They call themselves philosophers. So